So today our goal today is learning how to customize the ribbon. So we've been dealing with custom ribbons since kind of our very first assignments, have kind of ribbon customizations built into them. These are ribbon customizations that follow the workbook around. And by the way, we're doing customizing the ribbon, and we are seeing how to build an add-in. And so we'll kind of talk about that. It's actually unbelievably simple to make an add-in once you're already making stuff with VBA. So maybe you've seen, let's see, did I close Excel altogether? I probably did. Maybe you've seen this way of modifying the ribbon. So I'm just going to come here to options. Somewhere down here, I've got customize the ribbon. And then, yeah, like over here, I can say, you know what, I want to make a new ribbon group, and I can bring in some of these existing commands. I can come here and find, any macros that I might have in my workbooks. I can bring those on. And so I can customize the ribbon in this way, just through this interface. But when I customize the ribbon with this approach, I am changing this installation of Excel. So I installed Excel on this machine, and I've changed it. So every time I open up Excel, regardless of which workbook is open, these ribbon modifications are going to be here. Now, and that's pretty simple to do. So, I'll let you work with that. But what I'm looking at is I want to be able to say, let's make a ribbon modification that follows the workbook. So if I've got something going on in this workbook, I've got some VBA in this workbook, and I want to be able to have ribbons, some buttons in the ribbon to be able to control it, allow the user to give some control to it. I want that ribbon to follow the workbook wherever it goes. And so that's really what we're focusing on today. And it's not simple, but it's within the grasp of each of you. So let's take a look at some of the other things that I want to get downloaded and kind of get installing while I'm giving you some background on this. Let me just look at these first couple of links really quickly. So this first link right here, back in 2007 is when Microsoft introduced the ribbon. So prior to that, it was just like text menus, and those text menus we could manipulate really easily with VBA. Like we could just have VBA that puts a new menu choice on the main menu bar and drops down other options and kind of builds that whole thing out. So when they replaced it with this ribbon, we thought, wow, what are we going to do now with our code to be able to modify things in the ribbon? And it was clear that they were expecting us to do something with it, but the documentation in 2007 was almost zero. And so this guy, Ron de Bruin, is a guy out in the Netherlands who kind of went through the real headaches to figure out exactly how to do that. And he published one of the very early sites on how to automate the ribbon. And so, and it still really is kind of the go-to site for examples, and you really want to learn more about what is really possible with the ribbon. We're going to scratch the surface today in terms of what you can do with the ribbon. For example, we're just going to create a new custom group, and we're going to put buttons on the ribbon that can invoke VBA code. But anything that you see in the ribbon on a workbook, let me just make a new workbook here. Anything you see in the ribbon, this is all stuff that you can do as well. So you can put a drop down here in the ribbon. You can put kind of more complex things here. And all we'll be looking at today is how to put a button on the ribbon, like create groups and put a button. But anything you see in the ribbon is stuff that you can do through customizing the ribbon. So that is, I'm just kind of pointing you to this resource because this is like the go-to site for saying, how do we modify the ribbon? Now, the next thing we're going to have you do is we're going to have you download this RibbonX editor. It is possible to do these ribbon modifications without this editor, but this editor is going to make your life so much easier for modifying the ribbons. Let's just go ahead and get this thing installed. So I'm just going to come down to here to where it says asset. Follow that link and come down to where it says assets. And I think your best one to install, like this one here, that is the self-contained .NET6 installer. It's 48 megabytes, but that's probably the best one to install. How long does that take? Someone just kind of download this and tell me how long it looks like it's going to take to download. Is it downloading fast, or is that a while? Okay, yeah, this is probably the one you should use. Now, as it turns out, on this computer on the podium here, I don't have authority to install software. And so I'm just going to download these binary files. And So it turns out that, this, I'm going to have to extract this, but I can just launch the editor from here without going through an install process, and that will work fine for me for today. But I think you're better off to go ahead and go through the whole regular installation process. Go ahead and get that downloading and installing so that that's ready when we get there. And I'm going to give you some more background here. You just make sure I can open it. Oh, I have to extract this. And then, okay, looks like that's opening okay for me here. Okay, so a little bit of background then on really what's going on here. So let me look at a workbook that I downloaded earlier in the semester. So here's a Fallen Angel assignment. So you'll remember this Fallen Angel workbook. It was our first project that it had a ribbon modification built into it. Need to go and enable that one. So properties on block. We'll come to the assignment, and we have these two buttons here. And what do? One of them will run your code. Right now, it just displays a message box saying you have to go do that. The other one will clear any code that you have in here. That'll clear results. Okay, and of course, the whole point here, and this is what we're trying to accomplish today, right? To show you how to do this, is to be able to put this into the ribbon that will then, articulate your VBA code. So I'm going to go ahead and close this workbook. And, kind of this next part, like when I was first learning in 2007, when I was first learning that this is the way you have to modify the ribbon now, I was like, that's got to be wrong. There's got to be a better way to do this. And there's not. This is the way that you do it. And it is it's really kind of strange and odd. And because it's so weird, almost nobody can do this. So, once you learn how to do it, you'll go, okay, this was a little bit weird, but we've been through it. We've got have the video and this site to be able to help you get there. You can really impress your fellow coworkers and your bosses with doing this stuff because it really is, it's obscure. So to understand this, I'm going to do something really strange. I am going to change the name of this file. I'm going to change the extension from .xlsm. You don't have to do this along with me. I just want you to watch so you can understand the background here. I'm going to change it from a .xlsm file, an Excel macro-enabled workbook, to a .zip. All I'm doing is changing the extension on this file. That is a really weird thing to do. And this only works because it happens that the actual file format for an Excel workbook, it is a zip archive of a bunch of other files, most of which are just XML files, extensible markup language files. So I'm going to change the name of that workbook. Are you sure you want to change the extension? Yeah, I'm sure. And so, now we can see, zoom in here a bit, we can see that the little icon here is a compressed folder. I'm going to right click that and choose extract all. And it's extracting off screen, but we just go ahead and extract it. And we should see that then make up then a new folder. So did it do it here? Yeah. So here's fallenangel.zip, and then here's just fallen angel, not a compressed folder, just a regular folder. So this is really this is what that Excel file structure is. It is a folder that's zipped up and compressed together. Let's just kind of take a quick look here at what's here. Let me come to the Excel folder, XL folder, and under worksheets, we've got just one worksheet on here. I'm going to open up that file, and it's going to open with Internet Explorer. That's awesome. But this is that file. And so if I was to see like some numbers that are here, this is like So here's sheet data. So here's where the data that's on the sheet, row number 3, it's got columns. So these are columns that are in that row. So it looks like C3 has a value of 1 in it. The D3 has a value of 2. E3 has a value of 3. This is the structure of that file. I'm not sure why I would ever need to do this, but I could like open this up with a text editor, change this, rezip up that archive, change it back to a .xlsm, and it would have modified that file. This is just the underlying file structure. And so that's, even the worksheet data is stored this way as well. This file here, shared strings, if you've got text that's on multiple pages or even on just a single page, then this is where the text all comes into this one file and it's referenced from the other worksheets. Kind of an interesting thing about that is that it makes it so that if you have big workbooks that have lots of text repeated, having that text repeated multiple places does not increase the size of the file very much at all, because it's only stored in one place and then referenced from other locations. So you might recognize the 5-year high and then these tickers that are in that particular file. Now, so that's the Excel folder, but you'll see here there's a folder called Custom UI. This is the Custom User Interface folder. I'm going to open this up, and there's this custom UI.xml. This is then the ribbon modification. Yeah, and again, you don't need to work this along with me. We'll do an example together using the editor and what that custom UI editor that you're downloading and installing does. It's going to make it so you don't have to do this extract, modify, recompress, and then change the name. It will kind of automate that process for you. You'll still be working in XML, but at least you don't have to worry about kind of doing all this other compression by hand. And so if let me go ahead and just open that back up again. Open Fallen Angel. Sorry, we could not. Oh, I changed the name of it, so I need to go back and rename that. I'm going to change it from zip back to XLSM. Okay, so if we look at the assignment tab, we're going to see that there's a group here called Fallen Angel, and it's got 2 buttons, Process Ticker and Clear Results. So if we go back and look here, what we're seeing here is that we're saying, hey, this is a custom user interface. We're modifying the ribbon, and on the tabs, we are making a new tab called Assignment. Is that right? Yeah, there's a tab called Assignment. On that tab called Assignment, there's a group called Fallen Angel. Yeah, Fallen Angel, there's where that tag shows up. And in that group, Fallen Angel, there are 2 buttons. One's Process Tickers and one's Clear Results. Right? Process Ticker and Clear Results. And so this is the file that establishes what that new ribbon is going to be. And so that's the process of putting a customized a ribbon modification in here. Is we've got to get this file into that archive. And you'll notice that when we click on this, on either one of these, it's going to run a macro called run button. So we just go look at that example over here. Somewhere there's on here. Yeah, so here's a macro called run button. It takes a control that's a ribbon control as a parameter. And so in fact, when I click on that button, it's going to send a reference back to this line. And that's going to allow me to access what the ID is. So just look at this code. All it's saying is we're going to run a macro that has the name of whatever is in the ID. And so I've given this an ID of the name of a macro. So here's actually the macro that it runs, but that macro reads the ID of this and then runs that particular macro. So there should be a macro called Process Fallen Angel in here and Process Fallen Angel. So that's how it invokes that. What we do not do is we cannot have VBA code that reaches out and changes this XML. So VBA does not add a ribbon. You can't use VBA to add a ribbon into the interface. You can't use VBA to add a button into it. If you got a ribbon in there, you can use VBA to make some of the components on there visible or not. You can change them a little bit, but you can't just make them up out of whole cloth with VBA. So step one is get the format of your ribbon built the way that you want it. And for that, we're going to use that custom UI, Office UI editor. So is there anyone who needs help getting that installed? Run into a problem? Looks like it's installed okay. All right, so I am going to go ahead then and I'm going to close this one. I'm done looking at this Fallen Angel assignment. And I am going to make sure that I have downloaded the next one. So the file we'll be working on here is charts.ribbon.xlsm. So this workbook, charts ribbon, I need to make sure that I enabled this one. This workbook is pretty much where we left off when we were working on those census charts. So you might remember that we made a workbook that would kind of chart census data. So let's just open this one up and see if we can remember what we're working with. Save it with a new name just so I remember to do that. Underscore fall 22. So what did we do? Was it Control-Shift-C to make a new chart? Yeah, so Control-Shift-C will just chart whatever line I'm on. And it builds that chart. I think we probably have code in here to delete all the charts and probably code to clear off all of these columns as well. And what I'd like to do is rather than have the user have to know what the shortcut keys are for this, I want to give them a ribbon to be able to help them, just be able to choose the census ribbon and have those three or four tools available right there in the ribbon. So to do that, we are going to open this Excel file using that custom ribbon editor, that custom UI editor. Because I'm opening this file using that other program, I'm going to make sure I don't have it open in Excel at the same time. I'm going to make sure that I don't have this file open in two places at once. It will allow me to open it in two places at the same time, but if you're not careful, you'll end up writing over your code with a copy that was opened up in the other program. So I'm going to close it from here. Do I want to save the changes? No. And then I am going to open up my ribbon editor, my Office ribbon editor. And I'm just going to open that same file. So click on the open button. You're going to do this along with me. I'm going to go find my downloads and I'm going to find that charts ribbon file. Now, this editor is never going to show the worksheets to this because it's only about modifying the ribbon. And so it's saying, I can see that you have a custom a ribbon modification in here. Can I zoom in on this? And it's showing then what's already here. Now, this is only here because I must have come in and said, hey, I want to actually have a ribbon in this. So if you open up a brand new blank workbook, it won't have this custom XML file in here at all, in which case you'll choose Insert, and then you'll do the Office 2010 custom UI part. And that will give you then a file like this to work with. It will be completely blank, but it'll be there to work with. So this is at least going to say, hey, we're modifying the ribbon. We're doing this tab. And what does this say? Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think this particular file is one that I was doing for a colleague who wanted to disable help in Excel. It's like doing an exam. He said, I don't want my students to have access to Excel's help during this exam. And so what this ribbon modification does is it says, find a tab called tab help and change the visibility to false. I said to him, help is just a part of Excel. Why would you turn that off for a test? I want them to know it. Okay, so I customized the ribbon for him. but I think that's a strange thing to do. So, so that must be that on that file, there's no help tab. I'm going to get rid of this, which will bring back the help tab. And in fact, I think I'm just going to go ahead and let's just go ahead and go through this process again. I'm going to delete this file. We'll bring it back from scratch. So remove this file. And let's insert. Now, there are two different flavors here. There's Office 2000 custom UI part, and there's the 2010 plus UI part. And what this means is that in 2007, when they first introduced this, they said, look, this is the way it's going to work. By 2010, 3 years later, they said, we wished we had done a little bit differently. And so they made kind of an updated version of it. So unless you have a reason to think that you've got folks using Excel 2007 to access this, you probably just want to go ahead and use the 2010 UI part. If you're on 2007 and you've only got a 2010 and beyond customization, you simply won't be able to read it in Excel 2007. How old were you in Excel 2007? Yeah, you see, that was a long time ago. So I would just ignore that one for any new development. And I'm going to open up this 2010 one. So that brings it here. It's blank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come again to my Insert tab, and there's some sample XML here. I'm just going to come to Excel and do a custom tab. By the way, this same editor will let you edit the ribbon in Word or PowerPoint as well. So, and the language we're learning, VBA, is the same language used for automating Word and PowerPoint. The object models in both those programs are really different. I mean, most of what we're doing is manipulating the Excel object model. So it takes a little bit of extra learning, but you've got the foundation to do this same kinds of stuff, not only in Excel, but in Word and PowerPoint as well. And this same editor will do that. But I'm going to do this Excel a custom tab. This will insert it. That's fine, yes. So now it is given me this custom tab, the XML for this custom tab. So let's just kind of look at this XML here. So it's saying, hey, you've got a ribbon customization, and this is the way to interpret. This is telling Excel how to interpret this file. So on the ribbon, so from ribbon to /ribbon is the modification of the ribbon. I don't know what else you can do in the ribbon besides the tabs, but this is saying we're modifying the tabs, and here we're getting a custom tab. So this tab tag starts here, ends here. So everything in between there is the definition of the customization of this tab. It's got an ID. Every ID has to be unique within the ribbon modification. We're going to call it custom tab. That's great. The label is going to be what shows up on the tab. So we call this census. And then insert after is, which tab do you want to insert it after? If I leave this as insert after home, tab home, it's going to put it as the second tab. I usually like to just have my tabs go on the very end, and so I'm going to delete that. So without telling it what to go after, it will go to the very end of the tab list. It then says we're going to bring in some custom groups in this tab. Now, you're going to notice that these three groups, one of them has an ID property, and then two of them have ID MSO. So ID MSO, anytime we see MSO in like an identifier, that stands for Microsoft Office, and it's saying this is something that's already defined in Office. And so I'm making a custom tab here, but I'm bringing on a group from another tab. I just want to bring on the clipboard group. I want that group to go right here onto this tab. That's fine. I don't think we need both of them. So the font one I'm going to get rid of. But I will go ahead and leave that first one on. And by the way, you'll notice that some of these tags have an ending tag. So here we say tab, and it has a / tab that goes along with it. But some tags don't have anything inside them, in which case they just end with a / as part of the original tag. And that means that tells the XML interpreter there's no closing tag for this. It's just a tag by itself. So don't be looking for a / group to go with this one. But now this one doesn't have ID MSO. ID MSO says, this is the ID of an existing tab, a group we're bringing in. This one says, no, this is an ID. We're making this one up ourselves. And so this one is going to have something containing that it contains that says what the ribbon modification is. And so this one does not end with a slash bracket. It has a slash group tag. So everything between the group and slash group is the definition of this group. ID is custom group. That's a fine name, but I don't want this to say Contoso Tools. Instead, I want this to say Chart Tools. So I'm not sure what else we're going to put on this on our Census tab, but this is going to be our Chart Tools right here. And I'm going to bring this down to a single button. So each one of these lines now is defining a button for what's going to happen inside this tab on this group. So I'm going to bring this down to just one, and we'll get just one working, and then we'll bring on some others. So custom button 1, that's a fine ID. The label for this one, I would like this one to build chart. I have 2 sizes. I've got large, and the other one is, if you're going to guess, large and, yeah, large and extra large. You're close. It's large and normal. So normal gives you the small icon on the ribbon. Large gives you the full size. On action is going to be the name of a VBA sub-procedure. Oh boy, I don't remember the name of the sub-procedure. So what I'm going to do this, I'm going to call this, I'm just going to start this with X. X is going to, this is called the ribbon X editor. So modifying the ribbon is a protocol that's referred to as ribbon X. So I'm just going to put an X in front of this and call this make chart. And so rather than having the code from my ribbon try to invoke my default functionality for Excel, I'm going to say I'm going to create sub-procedures that their only purpose is to be invoked from the ribbon, and they will then invoke regular sub-procedures in VBA, just as a kind of a way to organize. Now, image MSO says there's a couple of different ways I can choose the image here. One is I can say, you know what, there's lots of kind of ribbon images that are just built into Microsoft Office. I want to use one of those. Or, and I'll show you how to do this today as well, I could like bring in my own image. So if it says image MSO, it's an image that's already built into Microsoft Office. We just have to find the ID for it. And we'll take a look at how to do that next. So we're going to make a chart. Let's go see if we can find a Microsoft Office ribbon image that might just kind of work for that. And so to do that, I'm going to come back to our blog, and I'm going to follow this link for the Microsoft Office image names PDF. I don't know who made this PDF. It was a lot of work, but they went through and they said, these are what these images look like, and there's the image MSO identifier for it. So this will kind of let me scroll down and chart insert. It's called chart insert. It kind of looks like a chart. I like it. It's even a column chart, which is what we're building. So that's the name of that image, and it shows you how it looks if it's large or if it's normal. So and there are pages and pages of these. To find the one that you're interested in, and then you've got the name there. So I think I copied that. So I'm going to come back and change that from image MSO of bold. I did not copy it. Let me go back and copy it. To image MSO of chart insert. I call this, it's going to invoke a procedure called X make chart. So I'm going to remember that because that'll be my next thing. And that should then give me a ribbon modification. Now, XML is going to be really particular. If I've got something spelled wrong, or if I'm missing a closing tag or something, it's not going to like it. So I'm going to choose here, validate. So I'll click on validate, and it's just going to look over my XML and check to make sure that it's well formed. So if it comes back and says your custom XML is well formed, great. I don't have a typo in here that's going to prevent this from running. I'm not sure it's going to do what I want it to do, but at least it's going to be able to be parsed. And then finally, we've got this button here called generate callbacks. Generate callbacks will look over this and we'll say, you're going to have to make some VBA code that will interact with what you built here. So generate callbacks. We'll kind of look across this and say, oh, you know what? I've got some more groups here. I'd like to get rid of all these other groups. So I've got just the one existing group and then one custom group. Generate callbacks then will make a VBA stub that's just what I need to be able to invoke this. Now, there's no secret here, right? It's called xMakeChart, but it's going to pass a reference to the control that invoked it. And so this is the part that's a little bit difficult to remember how to type. So it's nice to be able to generate these callbacks and then copy that code. Okay, I think I'm ready to save this workbook. So I'll save that. And that should give it that ribbon modification. I'm going to close it from here. File, close. Control W should close. And then I'm going to go reopen it in Excel. Enable macros. And now I've got this census tab here in the ribbon, and it's got the one group that I brought in, and then here's my chart tools with the build chart button on it. I have not made the stub in my VBA, so if I just click on this button, it's going to say, I can't run the macro called xMakeChart. Well, I've got that on my clipboard, and so I'm going to go bring that into my code. I'm in module 2. Module 2 sounds like a great place to be. I'm just going to paste in that stub that I copied out of the ribbon editor tool. And all I want that to do is to invoke the MakeChart procedure. So I'm going to call MakeChart. That button should work now. You go ahead and see there's clear data. Do I have clear charts here as well? Here's delete charts. Let me go ahead and run delete charts. So I've deleted those charts off, and now my build chart should just build the next chart that I'm doing. It works like a charm. Questions? Okay, we're gonna do a couple more things. We've got two more buttons to add. Actually, I want to add 3 more buttons here. So my chart tools, I'm going to have another chart to delete all charts. So I'm just going to get ready for that one. Here's MakeChart. I'm going to copy this, and I'll call this one xDeleteCharts. And that one's going to invoke my delete charts method. I have another one for doing the data. Call this one clear data. That will invoke clear data. And we're going to do one more now. I'm going to actually make a new sub procedure. The trouble is that I want to use this same example. I'm going to use this to show you how to make an add-in, an Excel add-in as well. But these things are tied, all these choices so far are tied pretty closely to this particular workbook. So I want something of a little more general utility for making an add-in. So I'm going to make another sub procedure here called format header. And the idea for format header is that it's just going to say, listen, what I want to do is whatever cells you have highlighted, I want to format the header of that range into a certain format. So let's just add that code really quickly. So let's do the. I'm going to want to know how many cells we have selected. Let's see. What I want to do is I want to be able to take what's selected and then go to the very top of that, kind of find the contiguous data at the top and say that must be the header for that. We want it to be the same width. and we just want to move it up to the first row. So if I'm thinking about how to do that here, let me just do a debug.print of the selection .address. So this is telling me that it's happening on row 6. What else could I do to get that? Selection.row. Yeah, so I asked for the row that the selection is on. What happens if I've got more than one row selected? That's probably going to fail. No, it still gives me number. It still gives me 6 as the selected row. That's fine. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to find the kind of the top of the contiguous data. So let me dim row as a long integer, row equal to active cell dot end XL up dot row. Kind of put some test data over here. So if I'm somewhere on this, I'd like to be able to have that tell me that row 8 is where the header of that block is. So that's giving me the 8 that I'm looking for. So I want to use that then to just replace the row that we're looking for in the data. So I'm going to have a range What do you think? How am I going to take that 8 and say this is the range that I'm after? We've got that selected. I want to know how many columns we are. I should be able to ask for what the first column in this is. Call equals selection dot columns number 1. Selection, my column is 20. T is the 20th letter of the alphabet, so that should be good. So that will give me the row and the start. I just need to know how many columns there are in this. There's 2 columns in my selection. Okay, that should do it for me. So now I want to say the range is going to start with cells, row number, row, column number, column. And it's going to end in cells, row number, row, column number, column, plus the column count. With that range, I want to do a couple of things. I want to set the interior background color to something. I'll make it kind of a dark red, the devil's color. And we'll make the font color white. And we'll make it bold. Okay, so format header now should just say, hey, whatever you have, whatever row you have selected, it'll find the header for that data and it will format it using that algorithm. And the idea here is just to have a general tool so that it will make sense when we actually make this into an add-in to have it do something that's meaningful. So I'm going to go ahead and run that code here. I don't need to be printing anything anymore. And it looks like it did just that. Is that bold? Yeah, looks like it's bold. Question? Oh yeah, it's doing one extra. So column count -1. Thank you. Well, I only had one selected, so we'll select them both. Yeah, that's what I'm after. Thank you. Other questions? I'm going to go ahead and make a ribbon sub-procedure to invoke that one as well. I'll call it X format header, and it will just call format header. Okay, so I've got 3 more buttons to build here. So I'm going to save my work in this workbook, close it, and then reopen it again in the ribbon editor. Okay, so I've got this one now. Let's go into the delete chart next. I'm going to put that in my same chart tools. I'll call this one custom button 2. This will be remove charts. I'll make it large. And I think I called it delete charts. Now, in this case, we could go find an image that would make sense for deleting charts, but I want to show you how to bring in your own image for this. And so let's just kind of go to a Google search to find an image. So let me look for delete chart icon. Let's just see what that does. We'll come to images. And I would like to specify a size. Can I still specify an exact size? I can't specify an exact size. We used to be able to say I'm looking for a 32 by 32 pixel, which is the right size for this. So let me just kind of look at this one, findicons.com. I kind of like that as a delete chart. So let me just kind of go to this page and see if I can find that image. I'd really like to find this in a size that's 32 pixels by 32 pixels. And maybe there's a tool here that will let me do that. 7 sizes available. Download a PNG file. And hopefully it's going to give me a chance to choose the size. Looks like it didn't.
There's
other sizes. Thank you. There we go. So there's 32 by 32. And I can probably just download this directly. Let me right click that, save image as, chart delete .png. And the truth is, it doesn't really matter which image you use. PNG is a great one. You can use GIF files. You can use JPEG files. They don't have to be 32. 32 is nice because it won't have to scale it. If it's a different size, Excel will do its best to make it fit. But now that I've got that file loaded, remember that this format is actually a zip archive. I'm actually going to embed this file into the Excel file. And to do that, I'm going to come here to the Insert tab in my editor. And I'm just going to go find that under icons. I'm going to go find that file, delete chart.png or chart_delete.png. And that file now is available inside this ribbon modification. And that name that it has right there is the name that it's identified by, chart_delete. I'm going to come over to this one. Instead of image MSO, I'll change it just to say image. And I'll make it say chart_delete. And so our chart insert just invokes an existing icon from Microsoft Office. Our chart delete is our own custom icon that we brought in. I'm going to make another group, again, with 2 ribbons on it. This one will be data tools. I'm going to need to change the IDs on both of these. So 3 and 4, I've got custom buttons 3 and 4, custom group, I'll call this custom group 2. And 1 will be for clearing data. And 1 will be format header. This will be X clear data. And X format header. And I think I'll just go find a couple more built-in icons to use for this. I should be able to find something for deleting columns. Table columns delete. There we go. And then the other one is format. $114 of these say format in them. Kind of like the format painter, I guess will be okay. And I'll need to make sure I change that back to image MSO because it's finding an existing one. So nothing really new here, just building the example out. I'll save this. And then close it. Reopen it in Excel. So now we've got those 2 groups here. Remove charts should remove the charts. Clear data should clear the data. Well, let's format the chart before we do it. Format the header. Highlight a row and format the header. Clear the data. Should remove it. So it's not a bad set. Okay, what do you want to see? XML, VBA? Anything that you're following along that you want me to show? XML. So there's the XML. We'll give you a minute with that. And then our next step for today is going to be to turn this into an add-in. So what an add-in allows us to do is says, listen, instead of having this functionality just be in a workbook and follow the workbook around, an add-in will be able to say, take the VBA from this workbook and the ribbon modification from this workbook and just install it into this version of Excel. So that if you built a set of tools that could be used on multiple workbooks, you could give those tools to your coworker. They could then install that as an add-in, and then they've got all of the code that you've done, and it's not dependent on having that particular workbook open because it invokes that functionality just based on Excel. Seems like about a year ago, I had a former student reach out to me who'd went to work for one of the big 4 accounting firms. And he was in the audit practice and kind of in the process of kind of doing audits that, you know what, I'm gonna automate a bunch of this stuff. And he ended up building a suite of VBA tools that he made into an add-in that got adopted like company-wide in this, I don't know if it was PricewaterhouseCoopers or Deloitte & Touche or whoever it was. But there was kind of, he shared with me the article from their internal newsletter that talked about this tool being available now company-wide for any auditor to be able to use. So, by the way, I hope you will do that. When you do something out there that you're kind of proud of with VBA, I'm thrilled to get an email from you. Say, hey, I just did this thing really cool. I thought I'd like to show it off to someone who could really appreciate it. The truth is, I show my wife like code that I've written, and she looks at it and goes, that's nice, dear. And has no idea, how, truly wonderful it is. But when you do something, kind of fun in VBA, at least I'll be able to appreciate what you've done. I'd be glad to have you share that with me. By the way, now we're getting close to the end of the semester. I also want to let you know that if you, want you kind of consider me as a resource for any work you're doing in VBA in the future. So I don't want to feel like I'm your first resource. But if you're, kind of working on something, you've Googled it, you just really can't figure it out, you think, you know what, Professor Allen could probably figure this out really quickly, I would welcome an email from you. We can probably, the likelihood that what you're asking me to do will be more interesting than what I'm currently working on is pretty high. So you can probably, usually within, shortly, sometimes the same day or the next day, get together on a Zoom call and take a look at what you're struggling with and find a way through it. And I'm more than happy to do that with you. Okay, we ready to see how to make this into an add-in? Here we go. I'm going to close it from here again. Control W, open it back up in Excel. Now, there's really 3 different ways to make an add-in in Excel. One is to write it in VBA. That's what we're doing it here. But I just want to point you to the other 2 because they're both really different. So working from inside of Excel, I can build whatever VBA modifications I want, package them up as an add-in, and I've got an add-in. The second way is to work with a language like C# with Visual Studio, and I can actually make what's referred to as a COM add-in, component object model add-in, doing that approach. It's much more technical and much more involved. We're not going to see how to do that at all here. And there's now a newer way that became available in 2013, but wasn't really developed enough to be really useful until I'd say about 2019. And that is using JavaScript to write them. So when you come here to insert and you choose get add-ins, you are looking here at add-ins that have been written using this newer JavaScript approach. So there's no way to take the add-ins that we're making here in VBA and make them available here in this, in this market. So it will be up to you to distribute the add-ins that we're talking about here. So here's what I'm going to do. I've got this as an XLSM file. I'm going to make sure that I've saved it. So if you still had it open, make sure you've saved. So I'll save. And then I'm going to do a save as. And I'm going to change it from a macro-enabled workbook to an Excel add-in, right down here, Excel add-in.xlam. So this is going to produce an add-in version of this workbook. Now, this is going to be a little bit weird because normally when you say save as and you give it, some different choice here, it's actually going to save it as that. But let me go ahead and hit save. But you'll notice that the name of this folder here is still, or this file is still .xlsm. So it didn't like change this file, make a copy of this file that we're looking at as an add-in. It exported this workbook as an add-in. This is still the same .xlsm that we were working on before, but it has made that add-in and it put it actually in the default place where add-ins go. So I'm going to go ahead and close this workbook. Now I've generated the add-in. So this workbook that I have open right now does not have the census tab because that census tab was a modification to that ribbon. When I closed that workbook, it was a modification to that workbook. So when I close that workbook, it is gone. But now I'm going to add this in as an add-in. So let's do it more quickly on the developer tab. I'm going to come developer tab, add-ins. And whoops, that's not the one. Oh, here's the 3 types of add-ins right here. So there's regular add-in from the marketplace. There's an Excel add-in, that's the kind we're using, and a COM add-in is the other one that we mentioned, which is Excel add-ins and browse. And there's that chart ribbon, sits here in users, my username, app data, roaming, Microsoft add-ins. That's where it put it when I said save it as an add-in. And so I can now take this and email it to someone, and they could then go through the install process, or we're going to install it right here. The file with that name is already here. Do you want to replace it? Yeah, I think it's trying to actually bring it onto that location. It's already where it is. That's fine. Replace it. That's fine. You'll notice now that that's checked. I'll say OK. And now my census tab is here. What has happened now is that this add-in, this workbook gets loaded into memory every time Excel opens. That whole workbook is loaded into memory. I don't have access. I can't make the sheets visible, but the ribbon modification now is visible and it's available. So if I had some data in here, will that autofill for me? Just get some data in here. So I should be able to come and highlight a row of this, hit my format header, and have it invoke that code from the add-in. So any code that's in that workbook is now available here. These other ones are here, but let's see. Oh, clear data might actually work. So this failed. Why? Because it's actually looking for that particular sheet. And actually that sheet is here though. What was the reason it failed? Subgroup out of range. It's because I have assumed it's in the active worksheet. So that we could refer to this by saying this workbook dot, and now that will resolve, because if I look at this ribbon here, we can see that those sheets are all still there. Like this whole workbook is there. And so I could have data that's stored there and have code that reads the data from that and does something with it in the other workbook and so forth. So the really interesting thing about add-ins is that you can take any workbook that you got your code, bundle up as an add-in. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do it until you get a ribbon modification in it, because now you've got a way to expose that functionality to users of your add-in. Okay, that's modifying the ribbon and making add-ins. Questions? Yeah.
You also had like shortcuts for macros in that workbook that you saved as an add-in. Would those shortcuts also be in there?
A good question, and I don't know the answer to that, but we can find out within the next 6 minutes that we have in class. In fact, I think it will probably take all of about 1 minute. Let's go put an add-in. Did we? Oh wait, we had an add-in. What was it? Well, Control-Shift-C. Yeah, let's try it. Control-Shift-C. Yeah. So the shortcut is there as well. And so again, if the code's failing because it's not meant to work as an add-in. But there you go. It took less than 30 seconds. Other questions? All right, let's call it good for there. Oh, one more thing, and that is on, so this is going to show up on the final exam, which is available during the final exam period in the testing center for the whole period. I'm going to give you essentially a ribbon modification that looks like this. And I'm going to ask you questions like, what macro does, the button with the label, where's that label? What macro does the button with the label process Tigers execute? So, and what's the answer to that? Is it process fallen angel or is it run button? Yeah, it's run button. So the on action is the one that it runs. So it's going to be asking you kind of stuff about that. You don't have to come up with this from scratch, but I'll ask you a couple of questions about a ribbon modification. Show me that you're conversant with it. It'll be okay. Question? Yeah, study guide, and it's already published. I hope it's already published. So it should be on Learning Suite, and it's probably down towards, like in the schedule towards the end of the semester. Yeah, it's on the very last day of class. So final exam study guide. And it's really similar to the one from the midterm. Other questions? All right, folks, thanks for coming. I will see you yet one more time on Wednesday. Class dismissed.